Hey guys, welcome to another week. And yeah, Brett's property rants. So actually, not a lot happening today in terms of property and that sort of stuff, but actually there's a lot of big picture stuff. So in terms of, we've got the Davos agenda right now, which is a World Economic Forum. The global elite, as a lot of people like to say, are meeting and basically meeting virtually. And yeah, having a great time discussing, where the direction of the world should head from now, which obviously, is quite a, how would you say, an emotive subject, because every time I put out anything about this, Davos, or about the World Economic Forum, or about the globe, UN strategic development goals and things like that, I get hammered. But anyway, we're going to look into it a bit further, at a broad level. We're not going to go into the detail. There's huge amounts of stuff coming out about it, but it is very coherent in what they're saying. Whether they back that up is a whole other thing. Yeah, so stamp duty not driving the market, which is, I 100% agree with that. Brexit, vaccine wars with the EU, it's all fun and games until someone loses a vaccine. And it looks like, well, I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, London exclusive property. What's happening with London property? And we're talking about the high-end stuff. Furlough scheme, cliff edge. We keep talking about cliff edges on stamp duty and everything the government does. Actually, so far, I don't think they've put a thing wrong. And so I think they'll continue to that. But anyway, we'll talk more about that. And then we'll get into Davos. But actually, I got given a great report, actually, KPMG, on post-COVID towns and cities in the UK. So some great stats there that it's worth looking at in the areas that you want to invest in, because we really want to future cast and see what those areas are. And then finally, as part of that, the percentage of jobs that are likely to go in a specific town. And this is just one test, so it's not necessarily everything. So guys, look, but I'm here doing this, so any questions you've got, jump into Facebook or YouTube or wherever you are, on Twitter, and feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to answer them as we go along, okay? So any questions you've got about anything to do with property, or anything I'm speaking about, or anything how it might affect property investment, okay? So yeah, also I've put my two websites, my two main websites up, and obviously you're on Brett's Property Rants anyway. But yeah, make sure you subscribe, comment, and we'd love if you also like this video. Obviously, it helps me out, helps us out, and yeah, we're going to get back into it. So, guys, the stamp duty. So, stamp duty holiday is not driving market activity, and I think this is interesting because for me, a lot of people are saying, and this is a report that basically, who was it? Moving Advice, Home Moving Advice, or Moving Home Advice did, and they found 37% planning to do it anyway. So actually, it was a very small percentage. Worried about stamp duty. And certainly now, I think most people realise they've probably missed the boat with the stamp duty. So in some ways, it's a bit of a redundant question, or study. But I think the important thing was, it's a contributory factor. That, plus there's the Brexit, getting Brexit sorted. There's all these sort of things that are layering upon. And that's why last year actually turned out the way it did, which is good news for us, I think. Yeah, look, Brexit War. I think we're going to see lots of this. I think lots of people want to try and prove just how bad Brexit is, okay? And I think that's one of the challenges that we have right now, is there is this whole thing where people are, trying to find stories, and the media is trying to find stories of where things aren't working out. Sorry, guys, it just looks like the feed stopped there. Okay, it looks like it's back now. Yeah, so look, at the end of the day, EU vaccine shame. Brussels plots to pinch UK's supply. Now, the truth is, whether we like it or not, Boris actually and the government jumped in pretty quickly, and some people at the time were having a go at them, saying, that it's, not good enough, and, that they need to effectively, they need to, get sorted before they actually commit to it, because this is they committed prior to the vaccine coming out, if you remember. But actually, that's now paying off, because now they're getting the vaccine before the EU. We've had, I think it's 20%, whereas they've only had 2% in the UK continental. But that was also their mismanagement of it. Yeah, they didn't actually just say, yes, each country can do it. They said, we want to do it as one whole block. Okay, and I think that has affected things. So yeah, let's see how that all ends up. But anyway, so London. Now, this is an interesting one, because one of the headlines was London down 40% property values. All right, and you could be forgiven for thinking that things are really that bad. Guys, can someone just write in the comment if the feed is stopping? Because it looks like it's stopping from me. I just want to check it out. I don't know why it would. nothing much has changed from my end for each week. But anyway, look, this is what happens with high-end property. It gets pushed up and then it'll drop down, but then it will come back pretty quickly. Yeah. So, these are all the best, these are central London, prime central London figures that are, prices have been dropping to, previous to COVID. But that's, understand that too, because at the end of the day, a lot of people who were due to complete aren't able to complete because of the COVID situation. So for instance, if they bought off plan, a lot of those off plan now, they may have paid 10 or 20 or 30% deposit on some of this stuff. And then come completion, yeah, they can't afford it. Yeah. Cheers, guys. Thanks for telling me. Yeah, that's good. I don't know why it was showing up stopping, but anyway, good. This is prime central London. And if you remember last time back in 2008, in the last recession, what happened to prime central London? It dropped 40%. Everybody piled back in, and then it jumped back up. Yeah, and I reckon this will happen. I don't think it'll happen as quickly as last time, because I think last time it was like everyone spotted a bargain, and I think everyone will spot a bargain now too. All right. But because of the ongoing COVID situation, it'll be a little bit more subdued. Now, the interesting thing is that this is not necessarily affecting all the other parts of the market. London actually, and if you have a look at some of those things, London overall grew 3%. So it's not all bad news. St. James, up 54%. Chelsea up 23%. So this is not something that's just a blanket statement. And I think this is what I always say, get local. Get local with your information, yeah? Because if you don't, what happens is you'll think that prices are dropping 40%, and then you realize in your area, they're actually going up 5%, yeah? Interesting, my prediction is a 3% drop, but in London there's a 3% rise. But actually, that's a different time period. Mine's for 2021. All right. So, furlough update. Rishi Sunak under huge pressure to extend scheme to avoid cliff edge. Now, obviously, we've got until the end of April, I think it is, with the furlough scheme, and because of the lockdown and because of where businesses are at, and because it takes time to build up. I mean, the problem is I've got a sales business, and that sales business takes about 3 months lead time where we nurture and build relationships with clients. So if we start today, we don't see the income for about 3 months. Yeah. And that sort of business, and that happens in a lot of businesses. That's just part and parcel of the business, buying a property. It does take some time, especially when you've got a fresh person you're taking through. So, just saying, right, furlough ends, we're coming off lockdown, furlough ends, is just going to cause a cliff edge. And I do think that they need to look at that. But as I've said for a long time, I think what will happen is rather than go carte blanche everybody, they will say here and here and here, but not here and here and here. I think this year is more about the targeted measures as opposed to blanket measures. Now, obviously, this all depends on how the virus goes, because if the virus stays the way it is, I mean, thank goodness the numbers are coming down now, but until we get a vaccine, I don't think we're going to solve that. I don't think the problem is it comes back down and then everyone relaxes and it shoots back up again. And we don't want this yo-yo. In some ways, that's where Singapore's done very well, because what they've done, they put it in and they held it on, and somehow, sometimes you sit there and think, this is just taking too long, come on, release it a bit. But on the other hand, they haven't had this resurgence, so that works for them. So Davos this week. So I've been spending lots of time listening to podcasts and all sorts of things this week on the World Economic Forum. Basically, they've got their, the annual, what's called the Davos Agenda. And the interesting thing is, there's lots of conspiracy theories about, but if you have a look, how to save the planet, that's one of the themes. Fairer economies, another theme. Tech for good, society and future of work, better businesses, healthy futures, and beyond geopolitics. The interesting thing is, having read Klaus Schwab's books, the three of them, The Great Reset, the future of the fourth industrial revolution and the fourth industrial revolution, it's an amazing the theme and how that theme is now coming through, and how prime ministers are coming out and saying they need to back this up. Even Boris Johnson has backed it up. He's told the Bank of England they need to align with these green goals, with this, these strategic development goals, and start looking at this side. Now, it doesn't mean everyone's jumping in, boots and all. It doesn't mean that, they haven't stuffed up some of the PR, because I think they did. I think by bringing Prince Charles in to talk about the Great Reset, it's like he just doesn't have, he may be one of those global elites, but the reality is, is he the type of person you want to take a marketing campaign forward? Probably not. Maybe if you're speaking to the global elites, yeah. But, so I think they stuffed up their marketing initially. But having read a lot of this and looked at lots of videos and been part of this World Economic Forum for this week, it's been quite interesting, just how much stuff is heading in the direction. And if we're, talking about that, we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution now. Now, if you remember the first one, the first was all about steam. It was all about manufacturing. It was all about processes for manufacturing. Yeah. And, coming off the agrarian society into the manufacturing things. And that's when school was formed. That's when we learned how to, put the head of the pin on the, things like that. Then we had the second industrial revolution, which was about electricity, which was more about, business and using it efficiently and, and actually having access now, not to, candlelight and things like that, but really actually being able to go and use that. Then the third industrial revolution, which is pretty much what most of us have lived through. Obviously, some of the older guys may have been, this tail end of the second. But certainly the third industrial revolution is where most of us who'd be watching today will have been through. And we would have seen the start of the old Amstrad 464, which I had when I was a kid. And, all the way up to smartwatches and, starting the Internet of Things and that. But really, the next step, which we are starting to get to now, and you're hearing lots about it, is, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, biotech, robotics, autonomous vehicles, nanotechnology, quantum computing, Internet of Things. This is really about the conjoining of all this sort of stuff, all right? And that's what they're talking about, is how do we actually implement this change from the third industrial revolution to the fourth in such a way, because the problem is the first three got, what actually happened, it turned wealth disproportionately towards the global elite, yeah? The wealthy, the rich get richer, etc. And, the disparities are just becoming more and more, which is causing social tensions and all that sort of stuff. Peter Christo, the conspiracy theories are unfortunately true. Look, I don't agree with a lot of the conspiracy theories. They just don't hold up when you actually look at them. But let's not get into a conspiracy theory today. I just don't have the time for that. The fourth of loss is property rights. I don't agree with that either. Reading in depth on this, that's not what they're saying. It's not about handing back all your property. The headline I think was a bit stupid. And yes, I've seen the video, and yes, I've read the 3 books about it, the Great Reset and all this sort of stuff. That's not what it's saying. But what it is saying in terms of the property rights, and, effectively it all stems from this stupid statement, I think. I think it was a well-intended statement that's just been misinterpreted, which was that you'll own nothing and be happy for it, And so everyone just took that as literal, meaning that that's just going to be taken off you. I don't think that's going to be the case. And actually, that's certainly not what's being said. What's being said is that we are going into a sharing economy, and that sharing economy says, and we're already there to a degree. Look at Uber. You don't have to own a car. I live in Singapore. Lots and lots of people do not own a car. They have public transport or they have Uber, and it works very well, and they're happy for that. And actually, financially, it's a better decision for them. Soon with the autonomous vehicles, why would you want to own a car that sits, we own a car that's worth 250 grand or whatever over here, and that car sits down there. We've got 4 kids, so we do a fair bit of that, but, it's sitting there not doing a lot, whereas it could be being utilized. And that's what this is more about. And it's, it goes to Airbnb, it goes to all these sort of things, software as a service, platform as a service, all these sort of things, which is about not actually owning stuff. Yeah. So Rachel Rachel's just put a thing in. So basically, will the foreign student numbers to the UK drop due to Brexit and COVID? This will affect property rental in many parts of the UK. Yeah, so look, actually, it's a really good one. I'm going to answer it today because, but I think let's get into more detail with that next week, because I think that's a really good statement, because there are a lot of areas that have been hugely affected by it and potentially are continually being affected by that. Do I think foreign students? No, I think what will happen is it will come back. But what's going to happen is some of those courses now are online. So it'll be like work from home, where part of you'll be working from the office and part of you working from home. And I think as long as, that's managed well, it will be fine. Where I think we'll have the UK hasn't made the mistake that Australia's made yet. What Australia did was it's sort of taken all the Indian students and there's a hell of a lot of Indian students and really made it difficult for them. So there's a lot of bad press about that and how dangerous it was for them and how racist, Australians were. And then the Chinese, because of course Australia picking a fight with China over, the virus, COVID and that, really has not worked out well for them. And the problem is over 50% of the students in Australia are international students. So there's huge business from it, which is the same in the UK. So that could be affected, but we haven't been stupid enough to try and yet. I mean, we've done a few silly things with China and that. We haven't, scared them off. But obviously the COVID ongoing, yes, it is having effect. All right. But I'll go into more detail next week because I think that's an interesting thing, because that actually plays into some of the things we're going to talk about in a second. Farming rights. I'm not sure what farming rights means there, but actually interesting. One of the subjects that I've been reading a lot of is farming side of things and just how we're going to provide food for the rest of the thing. And it's amazing how they're looking to connect farms up to not actually farms, but individual plants up to the Internet of Things, and they'll be able to monitor it, and know when they can pick it, and know when it's ripe, and a lot of things like that. And that's, it's quite exciting. Interesting, and this is my take on this whole thing, because look, you can get into so much detail about this, and yes, we can get into conspiracy theories, and we can get into the big picture, and hopefully this all works out, and we're going to come together and sing Kumbaya. But the reality is that I think there'll be some fails and there'll be some successes, just like everything else we do. So it's not a foregone conclusion that this is what's going to happen. But where I think we are right now is this, yeah? And this pretty much sums it up. You've got a steam train there, and stopped there is a car and a horse and carriage, yeah? And actually, for about 20 years, yeah, most people don't realize this, but for about 20 years in most countries and most cities across the world, there was cars and horse-drawn carriages, yeah, until about 1939, which was 10 years up, pretty much after the Great Depression. That was the case. It took about 20 years where there was a crossover from the original thing to get to a mass, and then for that to take over. So it wasn't an overnight thing where all of a sudden went, right, all the carts get off the road and all the carts. And I think this is where we're at now, where we're going to have people driving and autonomous vehicles, and probably for the next 20 years. Maybe not 20 years, because I think about that was a long time ago. Things are happening quicker now, but probably the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to have, the duality of things, where we're going to have massive amount of the old technology, and we're going to be living with the new technology. And it's going to take some time to embrace the new. There'll be the early adopters, there'll be, and it'll be a process. And I think that's where we are, which is a pretty exciting time, because at these times where there's massive change and where there's massive crisis and these things happening, there is also huge opportunities. So the question is, how can you take advantage of these opportunities, okay? For your family and for your portfolio and all that sort of stuff. And obviously that's something that's one of the reasons why I'm doing a lot of this reading and keeping up to date with it, because I want to make sure that we're not missing stuff as property investors, and but also we're not giving into the easy thing would be to say, oh, this is all screwed. We've got no chance. The government's not making it profitable. They're putting so much compliance in. They're putting so much this in. I'm out. The question is then where do you go? Because there's nothing really to go to that isn't affected by these sort of things. So yeah. And interestingly, this is just a classic example of what I mean by this. If you look at that chart, this is Tesla. So Tesla, worth nothing, worth nothing, worth nothing, worth nothing, worth nothing, 650% gone up in 2020. Yeah. Which is a pretty extraordinary jump. Yeah. And I think that's pretty interesting. So this is a new company. This is a new style company. It's a battery company, it's a vehicle company. It's taken an old industry and it's turned it on its head, and it's actually doing gangbusters. And I think we'll continue to do gangbusters. Their cars are so far ahead in the way they're designed. They're not designed as a car, which is the interesting thing. They're designed as an experience. And for me, the next car I get will be a Tesla. So we were all set to get a Tesla when I was in the UK, but then of course COVID happened, and that didn't happen. So I'm waiting to get back there. But no, look, I think that's where we are now. If we look at the other side of the coin, which is, let's say, Royal Dutch Shell, which is an oil company, a fossil fuel company, and look at their share price over the same period. Really not done a lot. And you can see the volatility and the change, just in the last year. Now, yes, okay, that has been hit by COVID quite hard, but the reality is it's on a downward trend. Now, the question is, can they swap from a fossil fuel to, say, a hydrogen fuel? What they have is a network, and potentially so they can, but are they able to pivot quick enough? I'm not sure that they're doing the best job for it, but they are certainly putting billions into it. But is that enough? So let's deal with the question. So this is Smiley A. Hi, Smiley. So I'm a first-time buyer. what would you recommend? Should I buy my first property to live in, or should I first be a buy-to-let? Okay, so there's one aspect, which is some lenders won't want to lend to you on a buy-to-let unless you have your own property. Okay, so but that's not entirely true. Okay, so you can still get mortgage. So there may be a hurdle from that perspective. The other side is this, is that it really depends on where you're at. I don't know, without knowing your age and things like that, but if you want to, send an email to webinars@gladfish.com with a bit of your, basic stats, and I can give you a much better answer. But look, it really depends on your situation. On the one hand, buying a home is an emotional purchase. So actually finding somewhere, if you've got young kids, if you're looking to get married, if you're looking at that sort of stage of life, actually there's nothing wrong with that, because that does become a good base to which you can build your portfolio from. Okay. But the other side is that if you buy somewhere to invest and you go after the investment elements and then you rent somewhere, often you can rent somewhere better than what you could with a mortgage. Okay. But the key is here, if you're going to buy a home, yeah, fine. But if you're going to buy an investment and rent somewhere, that's a bit more or better suited, don't just do that and then not do the investment. You've got to get that money working for you. And the sooner you get it working for you, the sooner that you will get the cash flow and the equity and that working for you, so you can actually build momentum and then build a larger portfolio, which will then pay you, dividends over your life, but also when it comes to retirement. So that's the sort of the brief answer, without any real detail about age and things like that and income, and because it depends on income and where you can buy and all that sort of stuff. But actually we'll talk about the webinar. Definitely jump on that webinar, because we'll talk about the strategy that you need now, okay, when we talk about the 3rd of February webinar that we're doing. So yeah, guys, so let's have a look. Most likely fallout for the world. So this is the top 10 most likely fallouts. This is from the World Economic Forum, which I thought was really interesting, which is basically prolonged recession of the global economy. 66.66%, they think that potentially is going to be what's happened. Surge in bankruptcy, big firms and SMEs, small, medium enterprises, and a wave of industry consolidation, okay, 58%. You've then got failure of industries or sectors in certain countries to properly recover. High levels of structural unemployment, especially youth, yeah. Tighter restrictions on cross-border movement of people and goods, yeah. Weakening of fiscal positions in major economies, protracted disruption of global supply chains, economic collapse of emerging markets and developing economies, cyber attacks and data fraud due to sustained shift in working patterns, another global outbreak of COVID-19 and different. So, you can see that gets down to 30%. So, it's interesting. So some of these, and I think this is a really good, one thing I like about the World Economic Forum is that you get lots of insights, because see, people think it's just a global elite, but as actually, and okay, it depends what you define as that, yeah, but there's lots of champions of industries, there's politicians, there's a whole mixture, because there's not just that, there's artists, there's a whole range of people put in there giving their opinion on where things are at. And so actually you get a really good broad take on where things are heading. And so therefore you can go, well, actually, if they're all talking about this, that's probably likely something that will be implemented, maybe not in exactly the way, because none of this is about this is what we have to do. It's very much about this is what we're suggesting, and this is what 75% of respondents said, there's this chance of that happening. So it's a very good means of really working out where the direction of the world is heading. I mean, Klaus has set up actually, almost the perfect business in terms of future casting, because everyone is generally goes there, which is a good thing, I think. All right, so enough on that now. Right, so KPMG. Now, so this is basically the future of towns and cities post-COVID, okay? It's a UK report, and effectively what they're looking at is 3 aspects, which is, they're looking at towns, the loss of commuter footfall, okay? That high streets without retail, because retail are largely moving online. And there's a lot of these sort of tables, which is quite good, and it sort of gives you down to town and city as to what the expectations are. Now, one thing I will say with a lot of these stats, okay, is they're making predictions based on their data set. It doesn't mean they're going to be correct, all right? Now, interesting, London, now this is at 1.32, so this is going to be the least affected to the worst affected by COVID, yeah? So 1.32, down to Bracknell 2.55 minus, yeah? So actually, London, Liverpool, Burnley, Birmingham, Leicester, Manchester, Huddersfield, and interesting, a lot of these places are really places that have already embraced a lot of change, that already have great fundamentals. So yes, right now, COVID is going to hit them, okay? But they will obviously, and a lot of them already are doing this. I mean, especially London. London is amazing because London got hit really hard with the financial services back in the past recession. They got hit again with Brexit, with another whack on the head. But the reality is they'd already pivoted to startups. So, London is, as much as we're hearing lots about the financial cost of Brexit and how the city's suffering and France is going to take the city away and should, Boris, retaliate and take revenge against France for taking this or wanting to take this. The reality is I think London's already pivoting, and it will continue to pivot and it's able to pivot. It's got a dynamic workforce that can pivot, So I'm not too concerned about that. Interestingly, this is one thing that I think everyone needs to look at and consider with their career is that percentage of jobs expected to continue being done from home post-COVID. Yeah. So this is one thing, percentage of jobs. So Hemel Hempstead, Bracknell, Warrington, Basingstoke, Milton, London's down there at 20% of jobs expected to be. Now, this isn't necessarily the full-time jobs, although, when you factor in, because a lot of these stats, and look, I'll leave them on there for a little bit more, but a lot of these stats, they may not be exactly correct. I mean, I've seen stats where 47% of the world's jobs are going to be made redundant by automation. And then, but that's one person saying that, and then down to 18%, on another. So it's one of these things where, who do you believe? Forget about whether you believe it exactly or not, but just consider why that is and how it's going to affect. I mean, the reality is the commuter towns are going to be affected because people can commute out and they want to live out, commutable, but they still have to get into the city. They still have to get into the places where the best fundamentals are. London and Manchester and Birmingham and Liverpool and Leeds and all these sort of major cities, in the UK. And I think that actually is something that, it's going to happen. And everyone's talking about, I've got a lot of staff who want to get back to the office, because they enjoy it. But by the same token, if I put them back in the office 5 days a week, then they might be like, hold on a sec, can I have like 3 days at the office and 2 days at home? And that may be where things are going. So that is going to have effect on property prices. That's going to have effect on retail, a whole range of things like that. I mean, it's interesting. In Singapore, which has got back to pretty much normality, restaurants now are packed. Yeah, coffee places during the day are packed because people are leaving their homes and going to have coffee. They're going to lunches. They're going to that. So it's actually, whereas I used to love this because if I'm traveling and, I'm working from an office and I got that, but when I'm in the UK, in Singapore, I don't technically have an office. I'm going to have a studio here, and that's pretty much where I work from. But if I want to go out, I would go out during the day and there was hardly anyone around, as long as I didn't go lunch hour, that sort of thing. And I think that's going to be more what I've seen here and what I've heard from, China, which is also doing really, really well coming out. Their economy grew 2.7% this year, whereas most economies dropped, dramatically. So there's good things from that perspective. And I think the one thing that I will say now with the vaccines coming out, we will get through this. I think it's just going to take this year. I think this year is going to be another year of weirdness, and then we'll go from there. Guys, before I finish up, is there any other questions you've got? Just pump them into the thing. Actually, we haven't any questions from Facebook. Is anyone on Facebook there? Hello? If maybe not. Yeah, there's plenty of people actually. Yeah. So look, okay. So if you're interested in finding out in more detail about where to invest, what to invest, trends and predictions, for 2021, in terms of speaking specifically about 2021. 5 p.m. GMT on the 3rd of February. We've got myself, Ryan, Dan, and Ritesh, and Dawn. So talking a broad range of subjects, okay? And we'll be then doing a question and answer. It'll be nice and interactive and that sort of thing. But really what we want to get you guys is the certainty around 2021. Because I think actually if you set yourself up right and if you position your economy right, it's amazing what you can get done in 2021 rather than sitting here and actually acting like it's, just a year that you need to write off. So if you go to that gladfish.com/trends 2021, that'll take you through to sign up to the website, to the webinar, and come along. It'll sign you up to the series. So every second month, we're doing a new topic, okay? So you can actually sign up to that and then basically get that. All right, guys, I haven't got any other questions, so that's it for today. But look, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like, and if you've got any questions, then send them through to webinars@gladfish.com, and I'm happy to answer them either via email or I'll come on social media and do videos. But yeah, guys, hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the big picture things that are going on. And actually, for me, it's a pretty exciting time. And I think as much as we can sit and we can say, oh, they stormed the Capitol and there's all this terrible things happening, actually, when you step back and you focus on the good things, it's actually amazing the opportunity. I mean, I was sitting on the phone yesterday with a couple of my mates in Aussie and just talking about the changes that are coming and that are already here and what we're finding and how we're making money and how we're changing and pivoting and adapting. It's bloody exciting, and as much as we can sit there and say, no, it's all turning to crap and we're all going to, this is, we're losing our freedoms and losing that. Actually, do you know what? If you can change your frame, the way that you think, it's amazing how positive things are right now. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. Have a fantastic rest of the week. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week, guys. And thanks, Nick. Great insight as always, mate. Yep, cheers. Guys, have a great week and we'll see you next week. Live with passion. See you later. Bye.